Dolly de Leon stars in Triangle of Sadness. I'm David Buchanan with Gold Derby. Dolly, I want to start by asking you, well, first, congratulating you on all of the acclaim and accolades for the film and for your tremendous performance.
Thank you so much, David. Thank you. It really feels so honored to be appreciated
Can
for
you,
hard
oh yeah,
work. Thank you.
can you just describe for us what a whirlwind the last few months have been? What has it felt like for you from the moment the film first started screening, through now?
It's been a little wild. It's been a bit strange and really crazy. Um, it's really a mixture of so many emotions. I am overwhelmed at the same time, excited, and I'm nervous, and it's so many things, but it's mostly good. It's really mostly good. I think that this is probably the best time I'm having in my life right now. So it's really exciting.
I can imagine, and so well deserved for the performance.
Thank you.
Abigail is such a rich character on the page, and she changes so much over the course of the hour or so we get to spend with her in the film. Just when you first read that screenplay or the sides, whatever material you saw, what really jumped off the page for you about Abigail and just such a fascinating and multidimensional character?
What really got me was when she stood up and decided to become leader without, asking for anyone's approval. She just took it upon herself to take the position of leader, and I found that to be very brave and kind of rare nowadays, especially, well, not nowadays, but it's a patriarchal world we live in. So it's an extra challenge for a woman to take up the position of leader without waiting for anyone's approval. So I found that to be very special, and I was really excited to play that because it's really very rare where I play women who have that kind of agency and have that kind of confidence. So when I was reading the script, that's really the part that really got to me, and I thought this is really a very special. It's a very special story. It's a really very special story that the world needs to hear. I know it's a comedy, and people find it funny, but if you think about it, sometimes the funniest things are really the most serious.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the tone of the film really balances the kind of satire and comedy with some really sharp, social commentary. I think you're exactly right. I had read in an interview that you did a lot of creation and backstory for Abigail as you were waiting for production to begin. Can you tease anything about, what you kind of fleshed out in her past life, and how does that kind of work really help you when you get to set and start production? What how does that help you really dive into the character and explore on screen?
As an actor, sometimes it's really a challenge when you receive, material, or you're reading a script and you need to memorize the lines and you're already envisioning how you're going to portray the character. It's really hard to do it if you don't believe in what you're doing. So I had to find reasons why she would do what she did in the whole story. Um, First of all, Abigail is very different from me in the sense that we come from very different backgrounds. I had to write like a diary or a journal of where she grew up, why she has those skills, why can she fish, why can she build a fire, why can she survive on an island, because not all Filipinos can survive on an island without any resources. So I had to find reasons why she can do that, because without any of that, then I would be going into filming, and I would go on set just winging it and faking it, and that really doesn't work for me. I have to find like a solid reason why my character makes those choices that they make. So that was very important to me, to make sure that to get to her background, why she ended up where she is, why is she working as a cleaner in a yacht, why does she decide to take up the position of leader, what happened in her past that influenced her present. And I think as humans, we're also like that. We make certain choices today based on what we experienced in the past, and that was very important for me in the process of creating Abigail.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk about the scenes where we see her on the yacht, because they're very brief and fleeting, but I think really important to seeing, the character before we really meet her and she comes to the fore in part three. Just talk to us about when you saw those scenes, and as I said, they're short, but what did you learn about Abigail from the way she behaves on the yacht? And especially, I mean, she's obviously extraordinarily good at what she does. She really even takes control of, the team as they're cleaning up that, catastrophic mess on the yacht. So what did you learn about her from those early and small scenes?
Well, Abigail definitely knows how to play the game, the game that society plays, where there are hierarchies, there are positions, people in power and people who are not in power. She knows how to play the game of being a compliant, tolerant, and obedient employee. And she knows how to follow and not to take the lead. She knows that game. But she's also a very good observer, and she notices how the people in power, like in the yacht, and people in society, the influencers, the billionaires, she also knows how they play the card of leader. So when she's in that position of power, she knows how to play that card because she's observed it all these years, because all the people that she's looked to are people who are higher than her. So she knows how to play their game because she's been a pawn in that game. So when she's in that position of being, quote unquote queen, she knows how to play that part very well because she's lived it and she's observed it all her life.
Yeah, when I spoke to Ruben a little while ago, he mentioned a scene between Abigail and Carl on the yacht where she's kind of observing him in the gym working out, and he said he cut that from the film, which sounded so fascinating to me, and obviously foreshadowed, what's to come in part three. What do you remember about that scene, and how did that inform, not knowing that it wouldn't make it in the film? But when you did that, how did that inform, how Abigail thinks of Carl and what's to come?
That's a good question, David. It's a good question because it did not inform how I played Abigail at all. Because once a scene is deleted from a script, then I don't take it into consideration anymore that it plays a part in the story. I think that the reason for Ruben's deleting that scene was because he wanted Abigail to, to appear as completely invisible in the start of the film and to come out as a suddenly, an emerging leader. Um, and also, I think it's because Abigail, I don't think she was attracted to Carl when she was in the yacht. I don't think so. I mean, and since Ruben took that scene out, I think I can say that. I can honestly say that she was not attracted. But then if he had kept that scene, I would have worked around that, definitely. But because it didn't come into play at all, I don't think she saw Carl as someone who was attractive. I think that Abigail, when she was on that yacht, she would just do her job and probably not even, waste her time admiring all the beautiful men. I mean, I'm sure every single time a man or a woman would get on board that yacht, they would, she would be, you would assume that they're all beautiful people, right? And she would be attracted to people left and right. But I don't see Abigail as that kind of person who would, yeah, that scene where she's wiping the machine of, one of the machines there in the gym and observing Carl. I'm kind of glad that he took that scene out because I don't see Abigail doing that. Like like a peeping Tom, admiring people while they're not looking. She's definitely not that woman. I don't think so.
I agree. I think it works really well without
Yes,
it.
right.
Ruben had also said he credits you solely for the really challenging aspect of when we meet Abigail in part three. She changes so much in the course of three very short scenes. She has to go, as you said, from the bottom of the hierarchy to the top, and it has to be, convincing, and it happens so quickly. He thought that was probably the most challenging aspect of the film to kind of get right. Did you feel that's a similar kind of pressure doing those scenes in particular, or did those just kind of make sense? That sequence to you really just kind of seem like natural for where the character was going.
I think it kind of goes back again to the backstory that I created for Abigail, and it's plotting every scene, starting. I I work usually starting from the end going backwards. So why does she end up doing what she does in the final scene between her and Yaya? What led her to that? And that would be her taking the position of power and enjoying it, right? And not wanting to let go of that. what led her to becoming someone in a position of power, and that is seeing how all of the passengers of the yacht were abusing the supplies that they had, the little water and food that she had, and they were taking it away from her and consuming it unconscientiously. What led her to give those things, so it's like a chain reaction. So everything leads up to that. So I had to plot all of that very carefully, even that point where she finally decides that, okay, I'm going to be leader. I can't rely on them. I have to step up and take over. And that happened specifically in the lifeboat when they knock on her door and ask for the food and the water. So it was a challenge for me to plot that all out on paper while I was reading the script. But, you know, um, sometimes magic really happens, because especially when you're working with a beautiful script like what Ruben wrote with Triangle of Sadness, you will find justifications. You will find reasons why your character does certain things. So everything really fell into place, in terms of finding justifications for why she would do the certain things that she does in the film.
Right. Speaking of challenges, I wanted to ask you about the shoot itself and production. I imagine, being on location, long days in the weather. I'm sure it was hot, and
It was actually very cold. It was, yeah. So I mean, for me, I like, I'm used to hot weather, but we were going into winter, so it was actually very cold. So yeah, it was a challenge.
Oh wow, that's so interesting. Because I was gonna say, how did I was imagining, I mean, on screen it looks, obviously
Hot.
hot. I was gonna ask what are those conditions? How do those bleed into your performance? How do does it help you kind of emulate the discomfort of the characters who, are getting more and more desperate as the days go by? Does that help, or is it, what is it like to kind of work in the elements like that?
It really helped a lot. It helped a lot. Number one, being away from my family for a long period of time. I was away for 6 weeks total. So I really felt like I was, isolated from the real world in a way. Even if we had, Wi-Fi, and I was able to talk to my family almost on a daily basis. So, but it's still, being away from them and speaking, a language that is not my first language, because my first language is Filipino. So I had to speak English the whole time I was there, straight English. So that was very challenging for me. It really made me feel like I was in sort of in Abigail's position, and being in the elements. Although we were in a safe space, it wasn't like they made us actually live in the jungle. They took care of us. We had our nice rooms. We were cozy. But yeah, doing the scenes repetitively in so many takes, it was really so exhausting, and that personally it helped me a lot as an actor to get into that mood of feeling really exhausted, tired, and hungry. Not That's not to say that they starved us, not at all, but it really helped a lot that I wasn't used to the weather. It was very cold. um we were doing so many takes per day. It was exhausting. Yeah, his process really helped a lot.
Yeah, I can imagine. You were talking about uh, Abigail's relationship with Carl earlier, a moment that was not in the film, but I do want to ask about how the relationship develops on screen, because obviously there's a power dynamic, but at least to me when I was watching it, there does seem as their relationship grows that there's a genuine connection between the two of them. I just wanted to ask you, how you felt about their relationship, how it changed, and just how you kind of flesh that out as two actors on screen, navigating the kind of incremental changes in their dynamic.
You know what? I think that that's another magical thing about making films. Sometimes the unspoken agreement between two actors is magical. Harris Dickinson, the actor who plays Carl, we never planned it that it would come out that way. But in the end, when we were done filming that scene, we talked to each other, and I told him, that Abigail has a secret, but I can't tell you now. I'll tell you once we're done filming. And I admitted to him that Abigail has some affection for Carl, and he told me that Carl also does. So that's the magic of movie making. You don't necessarily, well, I mean, not really movie making, but that's the magic of creating characters or building a scene together with another actor. Sometimes you don't necessarily have to plan everything and tell each other what your plan is or how you want to approach things or how you really feel about that character. I think that it comes out very organic when you just feel it inside yourself as an actor, and it translates into your action and the actor receives it, especially if you're acting with an actor like Harris Dickinson, who's so talented and very professional. So we're kind of like-minded in that way, and that's why we kind of jived, and our both our approaches to our characters, you know, they blended well together, and and that's what you see on screen.
Yeah, it is magic because it reads so clearly across the screen for me anyway. It's so it's amazing to hear how you kind of developed it separately, and it came across so beautifully.
Thank you. I'm
Um,
glad you saw that. Thank you.
I do want to ask you about the ending because it's such a spectacular end to the film. So if you haven't seen Triangle of Sadness yet, pause the interview, go seek it out immediately, and come back and listen to the rest of the conversation. Because the first thing I want to ask is there's a small detail in that scene that I think is so important. I think at one point Abigail says to Yaya that she doesn't have children to go home to. I wonder how you think, does that detail really influence her desire to stay on the island, her actions in that scene? Is that kind of a kernel in that moment, or how did you kind of process that detail that we get very late, but I think is very telling?
Yeah, I think that also, again, that also goes back to her backstory, of Abigail's backstory. She's Filipino, first of all. So Filipinos are very family oriented. If we have a family, we'll do anything and everything for them, even to the point that we're willing to sacrifice our own, peace of mind by leaving home and going abroad and working elsewhere just to make sure that we put food on the table. But if there is no family, then we fend for ourselves and we're only accountable for ourselves. So I felt that that was very important, that that line was needed to be there. Um, Not necessarily for the audience, but for me as an actor, if you know what I mean, just to justify it why the option of hurting Yaya would be there. It would be on the table. It is an option. It can happen. Because if Abigail had a family to go home to, if she had children, there is no question about it. She would go home and she'd miss her kids. She'd miss her family, but she doesn't miss anyone. So then you leave that other door open where it's possible that she could have hurt Yaya.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's so wise that Ruben leaves the film on this kind of cliffhanger climax. We don't know what happens. I won't ask you necessarily what you think Abigail does, but did you make a decision one way or the other as an actor and kind of bleed that into your performance, or did you want to leave it kind of open-ended for yourself as well?
I did make a decision as an actor. I did. I really appreciate your questions, David. They're very unique. I've never been asked this. Yes, I did make a decision as an actor. I think that's uh, compared to Ruben, who is a director, he doesn't have to make a decision about how the film will end. But to me, as an actor, I need to know what my character ultimately decides to do, even if she goes through a conflict, and she has to make a decision. But before she reaches that decision, she goes through, a dilemma. Uh, and the decision goes up and down and up and down, and you never really know what she decides. But definitely, me as an actor, yes, it's very clear to me what Abigail does to Yaya in the end.
That's great. One final question, unrelated to the film. I saw that in an interview that you would love to do theater and Broadway. As a huge theater buff myself, I'd love to know, is there a dream role out there? Is there a playwright that you would love to work with, or a show that you would love to do? Share, what your put your dream out there for what
You
you
know,
would love to do.
David, you know what? Every Even every time I'm asked this question, I really wish I had an answer. And sometimes when I'm alone, I just think hard and yeah, what is my dream role? There really is none. Unfortunately, I don't have a dream role, but what I do dream of is working with a new script. A new script, a young director, not necessarily young in age, but young with in terms of ideas. I want to work with new ideas. I want to work with visionary director, passionate actor. So it's really more of the team. more of the people I work with and the material. And then whatever character is there in for me, then I will work with that as long as all the other elements are present. Because, I mean, I think I can find a way to make the character my dream character that, in my head right now, there I don't have. When I was younger, I had dream roles. I my dream was to play Sally Bowes in Cabaret, things like that. My dream was to play Agnes in Agnes of God. But now there is no dream role. It's really just a dream team. I'd love to work with a new script, a passionate team, a visionary director, and actors who love the craft.
Well, we would absolutely love to see that happen. Let's keep our fingers crossed that you do make it to the stage in New York. Dolly de Leon, congratulations on Triangle of Sadness, and thank you so
Thank
much for
you so
talking to
much.
us.
Thank you, David. Thank you.